The time is June 1990, where the formula of sequels being bigger and bolder is held true but turned upside down by the delightfully unhinged Joe Dante, who takes the cute and the marketable Mogwai Gizmo along with the chaos of the original and cranks it up to level 11. Forget small-town Christmas scares, this time our characters Billy and Kate move to New York and work for a media tycoon, Mr. Clamp, whose sole intent is to create an over-the-top world of innovation, media, and technology that rarely ever works. And to make it worse, once our cute and cuddly Gizmo gets wet in the Big Apple, all hell breaks loose in Clamp Tower. The Gremlins are on the loose by utter chaos. They mutate into brainy philosophers, electricity-slinging monsters, bats to even a vegetable hybrid, and basically turn a late 80s idea into an all-you-can-eat buffet of satire. This week on Back to the Balcony, we discuss Gremlins 2, The New Batch.
Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, two titans of cinematic review. Sometimes right, sometimes wrong, but always captivating. Your hosts Antonio of the Cult-Worthy Cinema Podcast and Justin Henson of the Movie Wire are here to take you back to the balcony.
Alright, so this one I told you last week is near and dear to my heart because this is the first movie my parents said no to. I couldn't see this in theaters. I couldn't see it on video. And as an 9-year-old, when you say no to something taboo, we're going to see it one way or another. And I remember peeking out of my bedroom door, watching my parents see this. And you know, I think this movie opens up a bigger topic because this is kind of the topic of the PG to PG-13. I mean, Spielberg Productions and Gremlins were responsible mostly for the PG to introducing the PG-13 rating. And when we had Gremlins kind of push the boundaries, and this one came out as PG-13, parents said, hell no. This one must be even worse than the original. So I think I'm not alone on this, but I remember having a choice between Dick Tracy, Ninja Turtles for the second time, and never this one. So this one, growing up, I can't remember when I sat down and actually watched it, but I remember even peeking out of my bedroom door into the living room. This one had me engulfed. This is like a 2 to 3 time watch for me each year. I love this movie.
Yeah, you're going to get no arguments from me. I had this movie on my top 10 favorite sequels episode on the Cult-Worthy. It was like number 5, I think. Gremlins 2 is just something else. And well, the thing that I can say about it is that my parents were more than happy to take me to the theater to see it when it came out in 1990 because the original Gremlins was a family favorite, a perennial favorite of ours. I mean, we watched it at Christmas, but we also just watched it whenever. Now, this is where I think we're going to get an interesting conversation when it comes to the critique of this film from Siskel and Ebert, because this is a movie that has only gained in popularity over, let's say, like the last 10, 15 years, as people started to discover the nuance of it, and the fact that it really is the proto-meta self-aware movie. There were movies that dabbled in those waters before, but most of them were like pure satire or pure farce. You know, I'd say the Zaz team, the Airplane, Naked Gun, Hot Shots movies kind of played in those waters. Mel Brooks definitely played in those waters, but you rarely saw a sequel that was so on board to detach itself thematically and in the style of filmmaking than Gremlins to Gremlins 2. It's practically a solo act in that part, where it really doesn't give a shit what the first one did. In fact, it wants to break down all of the questions and issues that people had with the logic and physics of the first one. They're going to satirize it in the second one. And over time, people really began to appreciate it. Quentin Tarantino calls it a masterpiece. I've always thought it was a masterpiece, but going back to my original point, my parents just didn't get it because it was just too different for them. It wasn't like the first one at all. In fact, it was like a movie within a movie within a television show within a movie. It goes through all these different phases, and it changes perspective depending on which character you're following. Whether you're following Phoebe Cates and Zach Galligan or Gizmo's journey, the Gremlins journey is almost like I said, the proto meta where nothing really it works physically or logically with them. They live in a live action cartoon. And that's what makes this movie so special. It's easy to misinterpret what this film does, and therefore you just deny it and it's genius. Or I think, and you watch it as a kid and you watch it like a cartoon and you don't take it so serious and you do have the suspension of disbelief that you allow yourself to grow older with it, understand the jokes, the humor, the references, the oddball characters that he brought in his cameos, like Jerry Goldsmith as a cameo. Who's going to recognize that guy? At 9 years old, I didn't, but at 45, I'm like, oh, it's Jerry Goldsmith. That's what I'm talking about. It's a movie for people who love movies.
This movie, definitely, you can grow with. And I think it is shocking to me at the time that nobody really did understand this. The cameos are some of the best pieces of it. I mean, Henry Gibson as the smoking employee that gets kicked off. This is an homage to cheesy, cheeky horror movies of the past. I mean, we have the Dracula uh, host that really does lean into this is really a monster movie. This is a mix between monster movie of the 40s, 50s, 60s to a cartoon. This one really did lean into the entertainment aspect versus the scares, but that doesn't limit the shocking moments of the scares because we do have the spider gremlin that does have again that 50s creature feature shot where it's in the ventilation system that really does bring some chill, but it's still fun. This movie never
Mm-hmm.
goes full scare. It really does just balance it almost to a perfection of I want to say this one was almost more appropriate for kids than the original because it never does take itself too seriously. For every creepy moment to every grotesque moment, there's a laugh. There's a cartoon element. Even in the beginning, we get the Warner Brothers cartoon that we don't see anymore that I completely miss. So this one really does scream holistic entertainment. If you take the cartoon violence out of it, this is no different than watching a Tom and Jerry without blood. This is no different than a Looney Tunes without blood. This is pure preteen adult fun.
And what I like about it that Joe Dante is a genius filmmaker, and even though he didn't write the script, you can tell that he has a lot of influence in what the cameos are and what the references he's making visually, not just narratively from the screenplay. If the first film was kind of an ironic look on a mix of 50s horror movies and let's say early 80s horror movies like Alien, right? Or The Thing, body horror in a sense, cocoons, viscera, slime, and goo. But then also the Christmas films like It's a Wonderful Life and White Christmas. Like there's so many of those references. What he does with this one is he takes all those references like he does in other films, but also this is a great example of satirizing what is happening in pop culture and in corporations. And it almost feels more in tune with today. The fact that we have John Glover as Daniel Clamp, who is an amalgamation of Donald Trump and Ted Turner. He's a big real estate goofy developer in New York City, like larger than life. But then he also has a line of jam and jellies and a cable network. Essentially, he is everything wrong with corporate American capitalism. But back then, it was a joke. The realism of what it is now and watching this movie now is a lot more relevant and thinking that, oh, one guy can't control so many facets of entertainment. Well, dude, look what just happened this last week. We are watching a Warner Brothers film, and now Warner Brothers is potentially being bought, and everything under its umbrella is going to be run by one conglomerate family. That would have been a joke in this era, in this movie, and it's real. So the fact that we're doing this episode now, when I was watching that movie, literally the day that they announced the deal, it's like, oh, we're living in Gremlins 2. I already said that we were living in RoboCop 3 timeline a few months ago. Now we're living in Gremlins 2 timeline.
Well, I love the fact that in the 90s we can poke fun at these CEOs, these power hungry conglomerates, right? And they are portrayed as out of touch. This is a building
Right.
that
They're
nothing,
goofballs.
they're goofballs. Nothing goes right in this building to the point a file cabinet comes out and he convinces a CEO that this is normal. And it's one of those things that we don't see in movies that poke fun at society today because there's a danger to it, because it's just like any comedy nowadays that you have to play it safe on both sides of the aisle. It's okay to make fun of the rich. It's okay to say the CEO is out of touch because guess what? They normally are when it comes to going to that floor and seeing what's going on the employee level. It's okay to understand that kind of element to it. So I think this is where I think this movie is really, truly special when it comes to this is one of the last of its kind of having a monster movie poking fun at the powerful and everybody in the theater laughing about it. So I think this one is really, really, when it comes to attacking multiple genres, multiple aspects of comedy, this is, to Quentin Tarantino's point, is a masterpiece because nobody can do it better. No movie can do it better than Gremlins. When you have a farce, when you have a monster movie, when you have a lot of messaging to it that is really subtle but upfront at the same time. It is a masterclass of storytelling.
It's underrated because it did not get enough attention or appreciation when it came out. Like I said, I don't think the boomer generation, our parents, they didn't understand what it was doing. It was a little ahead of them. It was way ahead of its time. But the prophetic things that this movie does, it blows my mind. The fact that Robert Picardo, who's like the head of operations of this building, the fact that like no one wears a name tag, instead they wear a barcode that he needs to like scan with a little magnetic wand just so he can see their name. Like that's the tech bro mentality that we are living through and laughing at right now. Is like I could look at a name tag and know his name is Billy, but Robert Picardo has to carry a screen and a wand to scan a barcode that adds 3 or 4 seconds of time to the process, but it's tech and it's cool, even though it's not efficient whatsoever. That's brilliant prophetic writing, man. And the way it's performed, it was just perfect. The fact that they've got all this nonsense corporate art all over the building, so they discourage people having like their own sketches or pictures of their kids because it devalues the idea of their place to work at, right? Like that kind of stuff is the stuff that we've been talking about forever, and this movie did it in 1990. Like it knew what was coming. And the fact that we don't know if this building is an office space or if it's a mall or if it's a TV studio, like again, it's that whole amalgamation of corporate bullshit in one building and nothing works. Like you nailed it right on the head. But the freedom of that, to be able to have everything in one location, not have to go all over the country, all over town, exteriors, whatever. Yeah, you got one floor that's a TV station. It's got a cooking show. You've got one floor that has got the vampire show on it. You've got a floor that's like the bridge of the Enterprise where everything is run through security and cameras. It's Big Brother like, right? Fantastic. Okay, we got to talk about this now in detail. Possibly the best movie joke, which isn't even spoken, is the fact that the name of the genetic lab that Christopher Lee runs is called Splice of Life Designer Genes, Genes. I laugh 5 minutes every time I see that sign on the window. That is brilliant screenwriting. That's one of the best jokes ever. And the fact that this is 3 or 4 years before Jurassic Park, right? And no one really thought about genetic design. No one really thought about how dangerous DNA manipulation and stuff like that would be. So in this movie, when it comes out, it's totally a joke. It's just a joke to keep the plot running and to make these creatures interesting. But now we live in the world of cloning and DNA and all this other bullshit and CRISPR. Like, it's not a joke as much anymore because it's what goes on in the world. But the fact that it's called Splice of Life, Designer Genes, brilliant.
what I love about this is you don't have to be an expert. Like, you take Crichton's novel of Jurassic Park, and of course, there's some research and some theory that went into that. Here, it's just an idea. What if? What if we have just random chemicals splattered around, a spider, a vegetable medley, you know,
Barnyard animals walking around.
yeah, this took an idea and just said, let's not take it too seriously. Yes, this is genetics. We don't know anything about it, but who fucking cares? Let's make a
Right.
spider gremlin. Let's make a vegetable one. Let's do all this crap. Let's make it fun and entertaining because the audience isn't going to have the research. They're not going to have the knowledge, majority, 99% of them. So let's just make creatures that are fun. Let's see how we can reach and make the most creative puppet that we can. And what I found clever about this with the integration of the genetics lab is we have Glover come down when all hell breaks loose, and he has to land that line. We're not going to renew that lease because
Right.
it's like it's one of those jabs where he has everything in the building going to chaos and he doesn't realize it until everything goes to hell and people are running for their lives. That's corporate America, where it doesn't matter unless people are running from the business. So I think that is a brilliant intersection of kind of what taking on what you're saying is this movie is more relevant now than it was then. It predicts exactly the outcome of what we're seeing today. And I think there's a subtle brilliance to it, even though we both know I think it wasn't intentional. I think it was supposed to be kind of just a wholehearted just jab at Hollywood per se, and a subtle jab at corporate America. But I think this one predicted the future more than any other comedy of its time in the 90s.
By accident.
By
By
accident.
sheer accident. And that's what something you said earlier is the fact that like it didn't even try to explain the whole genetic design and stuff like that, like Jurassic Park does. Yet I feel it got more right in its bullshit than some of the more serious sci-fi films of the 90s did. And that's what makes it brilliant. I mean, we could talk about Gremlins 2, the nuances, the cameos, the illusions all day. This might not be the episode for that. Maybe we have to do a cult worthy to go that far and deep. But the one thing that I do want to say is that the brilliance of the mid-film break, we don't see that a lot in movies. I think Blazing Saddles is the only one I can really pinpoint to where all of a sudden the movie stops and now we're watching like the actors in the real world, and then it breaks into like the musical number and then the food fight in the cafeteria and then back to the movie, right? Never had I seen anything like that in a film until Blazing Saddles. This one does something very similar where the Gremlins actually take over the theater. They take over the projection room. The film burns out. They do a light puppet show. And then we have to get Paul Bartel to grab Hulk Hogan to yell at the Gremlins in the projection booth to play the movie again. Now, I remember on the VHS version, they did a separate one. They did a different clip to go with the video version. This was the theater version. And then I found out, I never read the novelization, but in the novelization of the book, of the movie, the Gremlins actually knock the writer of the book out. And then the brain gremlin has like a 10-page manifesto of what he wants to do once they go out in the city. And then the writer wakes back up and goes back to writing the book. Like, that is the kind of meta brilliance I'm talking about, where I could understand that audiences didn't get it back then, but we've been tempered now in reality breaks and meta breaks and in jokes and suspensions of disbelief where it's like, why did the movie suddenly do that and then go back to normal? Oh, because we can. Funny games. How can the guy rewind the movie and then go back and play it again where things work right for him? We're used to that now. We've been tempered in it. And so that's why I would say 100%, people who watched this movie in the 90s and didn't get it, go back and watch it now. Because I think our brains are trained for that kind of filmmaking storytelling now. But absolutely brilliant. And I hate it when people bitch about that scene. I'm like, that's great. That's something different, man.
Based on all the cameos that happened in this movie, there's an intent to every single one. Where we have, Jerry Goldsmith, the music composer, be in the vegetable bar. We have horror icons from Fright Night in the movie. We have Leonard Maltin, who was such a good sport, who shit on the first movie, that we see just get ripped apart in a cameo here. And it's one of my favorite ones where I've said it numerous times. Criticism sucks. It's dead. It's not relevant anymore because everybody has their own opinion. And, the internet killed criticism because everybody's doing it.
Right.
I'll be the first to say it. But this is one where Moulton really did be a good sport to say, you know what? People love this movie. I hated it. I'm just going to have fun with it. So I have to give credit where credit's due that, you know what? You can shit on a movie and still have fun with the sequel. And even though he probably got paid big bucks, it doesn't really matter. It's just the idea he's in there to kind of just prove a point that, you know what? I'm going to have fun with a critique that I was potentially wrong about. I love that aspect of this movie.
Right. And Roger and Gene were actually quite favorable of the first one. Had they not been, it could have been them in the film because that was the irony of the joke. But yeah, the Leonard Maltin scene is hilarious. Again, like this reality break. Like I said, we could talk about this all day long, but let's not beat around the bush because there are a lot of points I want to make after we hear our critics talk about it. So let's go ahead and get this started. This was Gene's show.
Gremlins 2, the new batch, and here's a sequel that really suffers because it is so repetitive. Now with the original film so much as with itself. The Gremlins run wild here and run wild some more and then some more. All that's holding the action together is a slight parody of the entrepreneurial world of a billionaire developer modeled after Donald Trump and Ted Turner. The bad little gremlins have invaded a Manhattan office building, and Zach Galligan, as the film's young hero, tries to warn his disbelieving co-workers. I really enjoyed the first Gremlins movie. It was funny and also had some meanness to it that seemed to be funny as well. But this new picture is just too frantic for my taste. It starts out with a cute, good little gremlin, and then all heart and emotion in the film disappear. The Donald Trump jokes and the Ted Turner jokes start to wear thin, and once you've seen one gremlin create a mess, it isn't really a whole lot funnier to see 100 gremlins doing the same thing.
All right, so I think the biggest issue is exactly what we just talked about in our previous conversation. In that they, or at least he, doesn't understand the satire of it and the fact that at this point, if you were making a movie sequel, the goal was to either be bigger and better and more expensive, get more audience members back in, get the fans back in, or you're going to have a smaller budget and just go for the cash grab. We talked about that in RoboCop 2. RoboCop 2 is a cheaper, smaller movie on paper. It was a cash grab, right? But if you look at Star Wars and for the most part the Star Trek movies, they just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger to get more audiences in. So that's just how the formula works. But we hadn't seen something like this where a sequel is essentially being made by a filmmaker who was annoyed by the success of the first one and the studio demands. So this is literally Joe Dante kind of fucking around because the studio wanted him back so badly. He's like, well, I need the freedom to do whatever I want. And this is what he did. It translates differently than the first one. And I just don't think that these critics, and for the most part, audiences of the time, understood that. It was an inside joke from a Hollywood legend that I think only people in the know actually got. And then it kind of grew over time. But initial reaction, man, people are like, what the hell is this? And I think that's where Gene's coming from.
Well, he kind of said it right then and there is this. He liked the first one because it was meaner. And you're right. Sequels need to feel bigger. This one, it felt bigger because it had a bigger idea. What the budget is, I don't know, but I think it was modest to an extent. But I know Dante was asked to do a sequel numerous times, and he kept turning it down. And the journey of Gremlins, even when we're seeing it now for Gremlins 3, they're seeking out ideas, directors. There was one point where Gremlins was going to be on Mars, Las Vegas, whatever it may be. So I think this one, he just said, enough. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it my way. And he did say, I am going to make this bolder, but I have some ideas. And you know what? It's not going to follow the same tropes as we see from every sequel. We're going to go big on a unique idea, and it's going to feel a lot more fresh because of those ideas. I mean, if you can imagine pitching to an executive team, I have this idea. It's going to end with a Gremlins musical number of New York, New York. You have to say this is a gamble, but this is where I would applaud Warner Brothers, because this one was 100% a gamble. And you know what? Even though the audience reaction, it took them by surprise, but now Dante was proven right in his direction on how this movie should be handled, because it is a brilliant move. This one is one of those rewatchable movies that I think Gene doesn't get.
You say something really important there, because Warner Brothers of this era, the late 80s, early 90s, really made their money on being experimental and dangerous, right? Having Tim Burton and Michael Keaton do Batman, nobody thought it was going to work. They took the chance, and it was huge, and it's still to this day like considered the best superhero rebirth. You know, like bringing it out of the comic books and the silly TV shows into making a big budget movie. They did that with this one, right? I feel that Warner Brothers definitely has had a lot of success in this time of letting the filmmaker just go and letting the audience catch up with it later. But now I feel, and especially with the DC stuff, that's a whole other conversation, but you've talked about this on Talking Smack with Josh Scar. Now everyone takes their cue from Marvel Disney, right? And Marvel Disney isn't doing anything original creative. So it's just like this loop of creativity and quagmire. Like no one's doing anything real original with these characters. And in a way, they've trained their audiences to not want anything original. Because even if a show does feel original, or a movie does, then it can't get melded back into the big franchise building thing that it's doing. And that's what I'm afraid Gremlins might turn into now that it's owned by another property. They already announced Gremlins 3, right? With a lot of the original crew coming back. But what is that going to be like if it's going to be owned by Paramount now, and everyone's going to be like, oh, well, we can merge properties, or we can merge ideas? That's the scary part. And that's where I wish like Warner Brothers could have remained independent, because I feel like they were, at least of the big studios, the most daring to take chances with big intellectual properties. This movie was a chance. This movie took a big leap and a big gamble, and it may not have paid off at the beginning, but in retrospect and hindsight, appreciators and other filmmakers recognize it for what it is. So we might have lost that in all these new transitional phases and corporate hostile takeovers. I guess we'll see. I don't know.
I just want to nail this in the coffin here, is that's where I think filmmakers and writers are getting it wrong right now, is the experimental stage. It's not over. It can continue. And I think we're looking at the short-term effect, and you said it with Marvel, DC, Disney, every element, every franchise. It's in the moment, money now, but they don't recognize what a movie can be over time. There's a reason they call it an investment. You need to invest in your creators. You need to invest in the story. You need to invest in the writers, because you might not get that box office smash, but at the same time, movies from the last 40 years, I want to say, give or take respectfully, have proven to be that money truck of cult followings. And it's from unique ideas that happen. And you brought it up, and I cannot just stay silent when it comes to that, because there are so many one and done watches now when it comes to movies. That's going to be the death of theaters, and it's going to be the death of a lot of creativity. So I digress.
Okay. Well, let's hear what Roger had to say about this one.
I completely agree with you, and additionally, it seems to me that the Gremlins in the first movie were better made, that they were more interesting as creations. We know, of course, that they're a combination of, in some shots, they're probably like Muppets, and other shots, they're probably slightly animated and so forth. They have various ways of doing this. But in this movie, they just look like dolls that you could kind of, were being pushed into shots or popped up in front of the camera or something. Yeah. In the first movie, I really had the illusion that they were genuine little creatures instead of simply props.
We hadn't seen them before, and I remember going to that movie, and and the movie held back showing what they were, and there was a great sense of discovery and wonderment about them. And here, it's true, they are right up front. They're like in a toy store displayed to be purchased in some way, and it makes them a whole lot less interesting.
You know, the movie began with this little fake cartoon that starts out like it's going to be a Bugs Bunny cartoon, and then Daffy Duck comes in and they fight over who's going to get the top billing, and then they finally decide that since they can't both be in the same cartoon, they might as well start the movie. I would have liked to have seen the whole cartoon.
Yeah, that annoyed me. If you're going to set up a cartoon, particularly for a picture like Gremlins 2, I think you ought to deliver the cartoon. Why frustrate us? That was all a strange way to start a picture.
I'll start this one. And in rebuttal to Roger, who cares? Who cares on what the Gremlins look like in comparison to the first one? If it wasn't the fact that it's different but didn't add wonderment, I thought it had a lot of wonderment of the mere fact of what are they going to do next? Not what they're going to do with the special effects. That's contradicting to what Roger has said in the past. So this one really did frustrate me with Roger's critique, is he focuses a lot on the look of the Gremlins. I think in its own unique way, what kind of, at a first time watch, I was wondering, I still remember as a kid, what other version of a gremlin are we going to get next? What are they going to do with these special effects? And I know exactly what Roger is talking about in the original Gremlins, where we have that landscape shot of the army of gremlins coming through the street side. There is some wonderment there, but you can't base a movie on just a singular shot, because if we look at the bar scene, we look at the theater, we can see the same elements here, just a lot more animated. And this is one of Roger's shortest reviews, and I think there is a lot more substance here than a 500-word review that Roger delivered on this movie. And I think this one was one of Roger's laziest reviews, because when it comes to how much is in here to talk about, we can probably go on a couple hours with this movie. Yep. And the fact that Roger can appreciate the Hollywood middle finger, the satire, the comedy, the cartoon. He even ignores the entire movie and talks about the Looney Tunes in the introduction. They're frustrated about the introduction of a cartoon. Talk about the damn movie, because this is one that audiences are going to go to. Give them a reason to go or not go. You spend almost the same amount of time talking about the introduction cartoon versus the hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes of an entire cartoon. That is stupid.
Roger's complaint is that creatures don't look as good. I think they look better for the type of movie that it is. It's not a horror film like the first one was. It is a satire and a comedy, therefore they look more cartoonish. I feel that's fitting. And they managed to make some look even, crazier and dangerous. But here's the thing. What Gene said, he's like, what he liked about the first one is like there was a mystere to it, almost like with Jaws or Alien, where you don't see too much of the creature until the last half. In the first film, the first real gremlin doesn't show up until like 45 minutes in the movie. This is a sequel, so they're going to give you gremlins fast, and they're going to give you a lot of them. And thanks to the DNA genetic splicing lab, they're going to give you varieties, flying ones, talking ones, the salad bar pepper face one, the lightning one, which is a huge plot point as well. I feel like it literally did everything that people would expect from a sequel. It gave you more monsters, it gave them to you faster, and it really upped the stakes and, let's say, the marketability and merchandisability of these creatures. Like, you could have a toy for each and every one. The spider gremlin, like you mentioned, is amazing. Even the mogwai are differentiated from the first one, right? They're not just like the mean little creatures. You've got the goofy one, you got the Edward G. Robinson looking one, you've got the like hillbilly huck one. I love that. I love the fact that we were able to give these guys more personality and character. It really, if you don't realize you're in a live action cartoon when those first 3 mogwai show up, then you don't know how to watch movies. That's just my opinion. These 2 critics don't know how to watch this movie. And to your point, they don't know how to critique it either, at least on the show, because the things that they are bitching about are the most unimportant, irrelevant things based on this movie, where all the meat, even if they didn't like it, oh, there was too much satire. Okay, valid critique. They don't even touch on it, right? I can never have too much satire, but I can see how they could. So yeah, I agree with you that they really focused on the materialistic part of this movie, of the face value, of the visuals, of how it doesn't compare to the first one in that aspect, without even scratching the surface of the depth of the film.
Well, and I'm going to touch on this because this is contradicting to what they've done in the past with special effects, is we have to remember the first film was extremely dark. Every shot was dark. Every shot of the Gremlins was dark.
Shadowy, hidden.
Shadowy.
Yeah.
Dante puts these gremlins up front and center in the bright light, the puppetry. He had confidence in his special effects to say, you're going to see something different. You're going to see something in contradiction to the original, that we're not hiding in the shadows. We're not hiding in the dark. These gremlins are going to be the biggest aspect of the wow factor. Yet we're going to spend some time showing you different types of gremlins, and we're not going to hide them. We're going to put them right in your face, and you're going to be awed by it. And I think when it comes to Siskel and Ebert, they didn't appreciate that. And in movies past, they've always said, well, their special effects would have been good, but you can tell they're hiding it in the dark. Carnosaur, they made that point. You can tell they're putting special effects in the dark to hide flaws. And the original, to its defense, yeah, early 80s, they had to hide some stuff like that with the puppetry, the claymation in some aspects. So I get that aspect, but there has to be an appreciation to this kind of special effect, to have the confidence to say, this is what we're doing. Look what I can do.
I think that the female gremlin, the Greta Gremlin, is the one that I feel is like the true lasting character trope from this movie. She gets the very last shot of the film, right? I think that there's something very special where the only gremlin you remember from the first one is Stripe. All the rest are just, they're a horde. They're a hive mind, essentially. This one brings a lot of uniqueness and character tropes to these characters, and that female gremlin's great. And the fact that Robert Picardo gets the last shot of the movie too, I think is just brilliant. Yeah, I think that this is a film that, of course, these critics weren't a big fan of, and maybe the audiences just didn't understand it back then, but it's grown over time. It gets talked about so much in podcasts these days, and it shows up all the time in repertory theaters. Like, people love this movie, and it's great as a double feature, but also it's great on its own because it feels like its own movie. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sequel. It is very self-contained. You get to know who the characters are, obviously. I mean, the fact that Dick Miller and his wife as the Futtermans, they died in the first one. There's no doubt that they were killed by the snowplow. But yet in this one, they come back and he's like, oh yeah, I got shaken up a little bit. Like, it's a joke. Like, we totally expected them to have died, but they can bring them back no problem because it's that kind of movie. We've suspended our disbelief in the first 10 minutes of the film, and they can do whatever they want. Movies don't have that kind of freedom. Very few films have that kind of freedom where they can just be like, fuck you, audience. This is what we're doing. We're bringing dead people from the first one back, and we're not going to explain it. We're just going to brush it off like a soap opera would. That's the point, right? That's the pop culture spoon-fed storytelling of America. This movie is that, but satirically.
Well, now you have multiverse in cinema that's just gone berserk, so
they can correct it. We'll go back in time. We'll go to this other, yeah.
But I hope to God the third one, if they come out, Picardo comes out and it takes off where Gremlins 2 left, where we see a follow-up, because I need to know what happened with the female Gremlin and Picardo.
All right. So at the end of the day, I mean, neither of our critics like this movie. So now that I have to give a critique to Gene, okay, I'm going to be a little bit sympathetic and empathetic to his old man boomer mentality, where he just didn't get the assignment. He didn't enjoy the assignment, but I also feel like he is standing up for his convictions as a critic. So I'm going to give him a D, because I feel that he doesn't deserve the F, because I feel he just didn't get it. It's a D.
That's fair. And this one, again, I think I'm saying this more often, but this one is Roger's most disappointing reviews. For the mere fact it's his shortest written review, he doesn't go to the defense, he doesn't understand the assignment. And out of the two critics, I would have expected at least Roger to appreciate some of the humor of it, some of the satire, some of the stabs at Hollywood. And he doesn't even bring it up. It's like he's avoiding it. This is one of those movies that when you go to as a critic, almost as a pre-screening before anybody else reviews it, you want to be very linear and you don't know how to feel about this movie, so you want to play it safe. His review reflects that. Very short, very vague, very to the point. He doesn't know how to digest it. So this is his safest review I have ever read from Roger Ebert. And this one is not like him. He usually goes as the renegade with movies like this. And this is not the Roger I've heard or read. So this one, without a doubt, is a solid 1 star.
Yeah, his was more disappointing than Gene's was. I think with Gene, he really tried to do the work between the first one and the second one, trying to find a way to connect them and show us like the sinew between two films. What we have to realize is that the sequel is a sequel really in name only. Like, it really could have been any character. I'm glad they brought Phoebe Cates and Zach Galligan back and the Futtermans. But really, this movie is self-contained. It's a parody. It really is Joe Dante's kind of like middle finger letter to Hollywood of saying, hey, there's some of us out here that still want to make movies, not 2-hour-long toy commercials. And I think that's the point he was trying to make, especially in that closing musical number montage where Gremlins are literally wearing Warner Brothers t-shirts in front of the Warner Brothers studio shop, right? Like, again, it's the big middle finger to Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers can take it, right? They're like, yeah, we're going to get money. We go ahead, make fun of us all you want. And that's a different mentality back then. Studios are so protective of their intellectual property now, and they don't want to be fucked with. But back then, no one cared. No one, I sound like an old man, but no one cared back then. You're like, yeah, we're going to get their money anyway. Make fun of us. Shit, we hate ourselves. We're a bunch of movie whores, right? We're corporate whores that make movies for people to spend money on.
But if you're going to make fun of us, make sure it's a musical number, because everybody loves to end on a musical number. I know you don't, but I do.
Oh, I'll take this one because it's a bullshit musical number, right? But well done. Well done. All right. Well, this was a blast. Like I said, there was so much more we could talk about this movie. Every cameo, we know. We skipped over a bunch of the cameos. This isn't that kind of show. Some of the one-liners, the jokes, the in-jokes, the references, the fact that like half the cast of The Burbs is in this movie, you know? We get it, but that's not what this show is. So I hope you enjoyed it, though. Next week, it's my turn to jump back into the kind of like sci-fi horror scene. This is really kind of my follow-up to Starship Troopers. Gremlins 2 was right in the middle of it. That's fine. Gremlins 2 can be on any episode. I'm bringing Nick Castle's The Last Starfighter, an 80s childhood classic. Some might say that it is like the spawning point for CGI effects. Tron's the other one. Tron came out a little bit earlier, but this one I think was a little bit more ambitious of blending live action and CG. It's debatable. We'll nerd out later in that episode. But yes, tune in next week for The Last Starfighter. How do you feel about this one?
I think it's going to be a good discussion. I haven't viewed it in about 5-6 years, but you know what? I think this one's going to be a good debate.
Nice, because this was my birthday movie last year from my cult film club. I screened this and Daryl, the movie with what's his name? Barrett Oliver, the robot kid. I screened those back to back. It was really like I'm getting old. I want to relive my childhood night. And so many people hadn't seen Lost Starfighter, and they loved it. So not only does it hold up in many ways, but even new audiences find a lot to love in that movie. So yeah, they liked it better than Tron, and I was really surprised by that because I feel Tron has its base. There's a Last Starfighter base out there too, but we'll get to that next week. Anyway, like, review, subscribe to Back to the Balcony on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a like, review, rate, subscribe to us on YouTube. You can find me, my other show, Antonio, at thecultworthy.com of the Cultworthy Cinema Podcast. You can find my friend Justin Henson over at
The Movie Wire Podcast at themoviewire.com.
And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.